the recruiting space and job hunt can be really frustrating. It can be hard. A lot of times you don't even hear back. We can be like, oh, I meet all the requirements, or I'm the perfect fit. Maybe I'm overqualified, all these different things. And then you are looking at yourself as someone that something wrong is wrong with you. Without failure, there is no success.
Turn this up, turn this up.
Your professional development is one of the keys to your career success. When you combine your desire to grow with actionable steps, your journey to success becomes an incredible reality.
Hi, I'm Paul Faronbi, aka IncrediPaul, and welcome to IncrediPaul Leadership, where we learn how to become the most incredible versions of ourselves by learning from each other. First off, if you are listening to the podcast, you can also watch it. So thank you so much for your support listening to the podcast. You can watch it on YouTube as well. There's a link in the show notes. Click the link and it'll take you to this specific episode. But I am so thankful that you're taking the time to listen or watch the episode. Bonus points for doing both, because without you and your support, I cannot do what I do to empower young professionals in STEM to become the most incredible versions of themselves. So let's dive right into this episode. I want to talk about failure and resilience, as you probably see somewhere in the title. As recording this, I don't know what I'm going to title it yet. Maybe it's resilience and failure, maybe something else along the lines of that topic. But resilience and failure are key to success. And I want to start off with a story from me as far as failure and having to remain resilient. So a couple stories. First one, I would say, both of these stories have to do with the career space, but plenty of times in the personal side, but I'll share about the career space first. And if there's time, maybe I'll share about some personal stuff as well. But some of you know or may not know, I also work full-time as an engineer. I got my bachelor's degree in chemical engineering, worked for some of the bigger names in manufacturing and consumer packaged goods, CPG space for a while. And God has just blessed me throughout all of this. But it hasn't been without my share of failures and having to overcome things and just keep pushing, even when things are seemingly not going the way I want them to go. So in one particular situation I can talk about is when I was transitioning from working in Albuquerque, New Mexico, working for General Mills, to moving to St. Louis, working for Nestle Purina. So for those of you who are not familiar with Nestle Purina, Nestle is a parent company most known for the chocolate business, which, fun fact, is not really sold in the US. They sold that to another company, and it's more so in Europe that they have all those chocolates, like the Kit Kats, Butterfingers, Crunch Bars, all those things. That's a side note. But Purina actually being the most profitable business within Nestle, at least while I worked there, as far as margin is concerned, the pet food side. So like they go Dog Chow, Purina One, all those things. And so at the time, I was trying to transition into a role. Really, for the longest time, I wanted to work in research and development, was trying to figure out how to do that. And I also wanted a position I could travel more. And so there's a position I saw that was on the technical side, because I also want to build my technical skills as a packaging engineer. And so I was able to apply to that role, went through the process. Actually, at first was supposed to interview virtually for the final interview, which is pretty intense. It's 3 one-hour interviews back to back to back. So really not a break in between. It's supposed to be virtual. And then last minute, I remember in that week, they had called me on a Monday, and then on Monday that they wanted me to come in person for the interview on a Friday. Meanwhile, I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It was going to be in St. Louis, so I had to fly, figure out flights and all that stuff. They were paying, of course. I guess I shouldn't say of course, but they were paying. They weren't paying. I would not even have tried to do it. And so he contacted me on a Tuesday. I think I didn't book my flight until Wednesday, and then flew out that Thursday, interviewed Friday, flew back out Saturday. And that weekend I happened to be going to Chicago to see the Cardinals and the Cubs. So I got to really vibe with the team, because I'm someone that grew up in St. Louis, diehard St. Louis Cardinals fan. If you can't tell from my background, you can see all the Cardinals stuff above me and to my right. So if you're just listening to this, go ahead, go on YouTube. You can check it out, or you can just take my word from it. Diehard St. Louis Cardinals fan. It's been a rough season so far, but we'll see if they bounce back or if they continue the woes of last year. So that's a side note. So did really well that I thought, and even I got good feedback from them, also from the recruiting team. Until I was vibing really well with them, and it was just waiting till when I heard back from them. And I guess you can probably guess from the fact that I'm telling this story is that I did not get that position. But what ended up happening was I got feedback from them that I was good for the culture, as far as Prina really being focused on people and trying to, even what they call their employees, associates, all those things. And so people focused and really focused on the technical side. My main feedback was I didn't have the most direct experience with the packaging side as someone else. So it was less about me and more about the other person had more direct experience. And so I said, we're going to go with this other person, but we still like you. We want to stay connected with you. So the recruiter was saying, like, if you see any positions that come across, let us know and we'll see what we can make happen. And so I don't know if this ever happened to you. I know a lot of times the recruiting space and job hunt can be really frustrating. It can be hard. A lot of times you don't even hear back. And when you do hear back and they tell you those things, and then you follow up with them, you don't hear anything. You just kind of get lost in the mix of other things, because at the end of the day, their job is to fill positions. They fill the position. You didn't fill it. You weren't the person that filled the spot. So they just move on. This particular instance, I just felt just deep down that this was where I was supposed to be. And so I kept pushing and was able to find another position more on the continuous improvement side that actually was a little bit more travel that I applied to. I told the recruiter about, and this was mind-boggling to me that I told her about it, and she actually pretty much fast-tracked my application. It wasn't her recruiting, it wasn't her position. She talked to the other recruiter and was able to get me an interview. So between when I applied for it and when I had the final interview, it only took a couple weeks, because really we bypassed really the first initial screening, went right into the final interview, and then got an offer fairly quickly. And then from there, we're just trying to figure out where I was going to be, what timing I was going to start, all of those things. So actually, that's not even what happened. I totally missed a big part of that story, is that I got feedback that everything went well after that interview, but I think it was up to 5 weeks before I got final confirmation that I was accepted for it. So just think about it. Not interviewing anymore. I think it was 5 weeks, but definitely over 3 or 4 weeks, just at least 3 or 4 weeks waiting. Because I know it was even over the holidays, and then it was approaching December timeframe. And I just kept waiting. I know when I finally heard back, it was a week after. I think I did the interview like early November. I didn't hear back until like early December. And so it took some time, but I eventually got it. Later on, I found out there's some internal movement, and they're trying to figure out if this person was going to be in the position or not. Side note. Sorry, I got distracted. The book just fell. But that happened. I got the position, got to do a lot of amazing things while I was there at Purina. I was there for 4 years. Nothing but great things to say. The only thing that ended up happening, getting married and just traveling a lot, needed to transition to something else. But before I tell the next story, I want to talk briefly about some of the things I learned through that process. Is a lot of times it can be really easy to think that you are that something is wrong with you when you go to the interview process. I think a lot of times we can be like, oh, I meet all the requirements, or I'm the perfect fit, maybe I'm overqualified, all these different things. And then you are looking at yourself as someone that something wrong with you. A lot of times from working with people, it's not necessarily have anything to do with you. Like, yes, you might be a great person, maybe the best person for the role, but you also have to keep in mind other people who are interviewing and even the dynamic of the team. When people are interviewing, yes, they are going to take in an account like your work ethic, your experiences, but they also want to take into account how you're going to fit into their team. So if your work ethic and culture, if they don't feel like you're a cultural fit, you might be the best person for the job, but they're not going to choose you. And keep in mind, they're most likely doing you a favor by not choosing you, because if something is not a cultural fit and you get in there, you're most likely going to be miserable, no matter how much money you're making. So as much as it is a role that you fit in, that works for you and you can do the job, also make sure the culture fits as well. It aligns with your values, whether they're flexible scheduling or let you to work from home, whatever it is. Make sure it actually aligns with your values. Not all money is good money, as been said. Not necessarily that it's bad, but just make sure that what the company wants and what you want are actually aligned. So with that, this, in my case, it had nothing to do with that. It was just mainly from the experiences. It was a good cultural fit, and I was still able to get with the company. So fast forward a few years after that, I was working for a different company. I transitioned working as a continuous improvement manager. The culture fit just wasn't really there. There had been some turnover. Some of the relations between the union and senior management wasn't the greatest. And I was looking for an opportunity within research and development. Really, for the longest time, that was something I wanted to do ever since when I had been an undergraduate in school at Iowa State University, as you can see from that banner up there, Cyclone. So another shameless plug for those of you listening to watch it, so you can point out different things in the room from this setup. But so I had done undergraduate research all 4 years, or all 8 semesters, because I had a co-op in there that took some time to work. But I had done undergraduate research throughout, really passionate about research, the research method, learning about it, and even understanding that a lot of times you're going to put in a lot of effort and not going to have a lot to show for it, but just really enjoy learning and doing new, novel things. And so I was able to do that. And through my internship experience, work experience, I saw that I wanted to be involved with things that I could actually see and point to in the store. I'm still doing it, like even for companies I don't work for anymore. So this is my 5th company out of college. And then there's a couple more I worked at, like even during college. And I'll still, like, if I'm walking past a store in the aisles, I can point out different things, or like, or maybe I'll look at the date code or something, see where it was actually made in the country, what side it was made, if I could remember it or kind of half remember it. So just like little things, but that was something that I really like, to be able to say, like, I worked on this. This isn't on the store, in the store, so I know that is a really great product, and just be proud of it. So that's something I was really passionate about. The other thing is just, you really need to know what you like and what you don't like with any position, anything that you're doing. So let me take a break there and just talk about resilience and failure, because I gave that story, but let's talk about it, and I'll give you another story. One thing that we have to keep in mind is that failure is inevitable. Failure is going to happen. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And so I have a talk I give on resilience. I know I've given it at conferences several times. I've talked about it on here, but one of the first things I talk about is rejection is inevitable, failure is inevitable. And why I start off with that is because I think it's something that we all know intuitively, but maybe we don't always think about it. We think of a way to circumvent failure, to get around it, to be just to avoid it at all costs. But the thing is that failure is inevitable. It's going to happen. And when you try to avoid failure and do things very carefully, not to say that you shouldn't be careful, you shouldn't be thoughtful. Those are important things, but you shouldn't be so careful and thoughtful that you don't take a step of faith or just step out and do something new and novel. And talking to myself as well. And for those of you familiar with the DISC profile, this is probably something that people that are C's, conscientious, cautious, compliant, is the hardest to deal with. And as someone who is a CD, I know exactly how that feels. My first thought is to do things that are not going to put me in the limelight or not are going to be the lowest amount of opportunity to fail. And so even the fact that I am a podcaster, I do speaking, I'm constantly putting myself in front of people, opportunities to fail, post things, all this stuff. It has been out of my comfort zone. I would say I've definitely learned to be better at it. And it's not something that I would say is the second nature to me still, but I've gotten better at it so much so that people think I'm a natural. But I would say I still struggle with it and I still really identify as an introvert. But just understanding that failure is critical to success. Without failure, there is no success. If you are winning all the time, it really feels boring, to be honest. It's when you are able to strive and work and accomplish something that you feel that sense of fulfillment. And not to say that you're not going to have a lot of failures. You're going to most likely have more failures than you do successes. But what you should keep in mind as you fail is to fail differently as much as possible. Sometimes you might fail the same way, but if you can learn from your failures, or even one step further, learn from other people's failures, that's going to set you apart. But another thing to keep in mind is that we talk about resilience, we talk about failure. You cannot build resilience without having to go through something hard. You can't build resilience without going through something hard. It's like weight training, building a muscle. You have to tear it down so you can build it back up again. You have to be really intentional. But here's the thing with resilience. Resilience can just as much, when you go through hard stuff, that can break you down so much that you feel like you are never going to accomplish things and you can stay down there, or you can keep pushing. And then that is something that you can reflect on for something even better in the future. So resilience is a choice. Two people can go through the same things and come out really differently. So I'm a person of faith. I mentioned it. Jesus is first. I am second. And I have a pastor that talks about resilience and failure. And what I really like, he just boils it down to this. As you go through different trials, different things that are set up that might be able to set you back, are you getting bitter or are you getting better? Are you getting bitter or better? Trials, all these different things, setbacks, failures, these things can cause us to get bitter with life, bitter with people. I think we could all think about someone, and maybe it's yourself if you're honest, that has gone through hard things, and those hard things have left emotional scars that these scars are not there. Like maybe they've healed from them in a way, but it's let them try a little bit less or sink back into themselves instead of them seeing it as something like, oh, I went through this, but I came out on the other side. Something similar like this happens, I can keep going forward. So perspective is everything. Other key thing is having a relentless solution focus. So I've had the authors of this best-selling book, Dr. Jason Selk and Dr. Ellen Reed, both on the podcast. So go back, check it out. I'll link it in the show notes as well so you can see it. But the relentless solution focus talks about focusing on one thing they can do to make things better in the moment. As highly successful people that I know you are, trying to become the most incredible versions of ourselves, it's really easy to want to come up with a 5-step plan, 10-step plan, maybe a 20-step plan, line out everything we need to do. No. We need to focus on one thing when we have these different setbacks. So maybe you didn't get the job. What's the one thing you need to do? Maybe the one thing right now is to follow up with the recruiter, see if you can get feedback. Maybe the one thing is to send another job application. Maybe the one thing is to evaluate what happened. There's always one thing that you can do to make things better in the future. And I think this is where a coach can help as well. I honestly think you can do this on your own, but if you want some help, seek out to a coach. I can help as well. Reach out to me. But think about the one thing you can do to make things better. That was a little bit about failure and resilience. So I'm going to talk about another story. This was a slightly different, but that really led into how I came to work at what I do now at Mars. And so go back over a year now, I was able to connect with Mars at actually the NSBE National Convention, NSBE 49 in Kansas City, Missouri. Honestly, I was not even thinking of really looking for a job. I mean, I was casually looking because I knew the company I was at the time that there's some things that come up that I was like, I wasn't completely sure. And I'm just always someone that keeps my options open. I tell people to do the same, but I was a little bit more open because I just wasn't sure about my future there long term. And so in this particular instance, I wasn't sure, but I didn't bring any physical resumes because I was like, I don't want to go through that, printing it, blah, blah, blah. So I went through somewhat tech savvy. I have a QR code for stuff for my business. I added a link to my resume in my with my business stuff so they could click on it and see it. So I went through, really, I was just going there to get a bunch of free stuff from the different companies that were there, and saw Mars there. And I had heard of Mars. I knew of Mars. They're competitors with a couple companies I worked at, whether it was General Mills or more directly with Nestle Purina with some of the stuff they do in the pet food space. And but at this point, I was not with Purina anymore. I was working for a chemical company. And I was thinking about getting back into the consumer packaged good company as far as the food side of things. And so reached out, was able to connect with some people there and show them my resume. And they had really great feedback. And they said, like, we think you would be a good fit. But based on my resume, I had a lot of different things on there. And was trying to figure out what I focused on the project engineering side, the packaging side, or process side. Eventually focused on between process and project engineering. Had an opportunity to talk to a few regional managers, and then was able to land an interview for a project engineering position that was out in Pennsylvania. And the whole process went pretty well. Had good feedback from the team. I guess the biggest thing was that I didn't have the direct experience like leading projects. I was always a part of project teams. And like from experiences I had at General Mills or at Nestle Purina, I was more on the technical side and not like the project engineering side. So those are people leading the team, setting the budgets, doing the scope reviews. I was a part of those, but not necessarily leading it. So at the end of the day, like I got feedback back like, hey, we're not going to go with you. And I didn't get like a distinct reason why, but my thought was that it was just because this was a senior project engineering role and I hadn't really been in a project engineering role specifically. So they're like, hey, we think you are a good fit for Mars, but not necessarily this position is actually what they told me. So just keep in contact and we'll figure something else out. So keep in mind, like this is after what I mentioned with Nestle Purina. I've been in this situation or similar situation before where the company has said this position is not for you, but keep in contact. And these are not the only two times this has happened, but these two companies were something that the culture was a good fit for me. So I took it to heart and went and was interviewing for another position, more so on the continuous improvement side, because I was not seeing stuff within the process engineering side that I really wanted to do available at the time, at least in a location that would work for me and my family. And so what I found another one, and I was in the process of interviewing, and then I guess it got filled internally. And then all of a sudden I get reached out to by someone within Mars on the another side of the business. So keep in mind, Mars is a fairly big company, and I was interviewing for some stuff on the Wrigley side or the candy side of the business. So think of the gum, all the different gums, whether it's extra or juicy fruit, and then the different candies as well, whether it's Snickers, Milky Way, all of those different things. So that was what I was looking at. Someone reached out to me on the pet food side of the business, and thought that was interesting because I actually had prior experience with it in pet food. But the position they reached out to me wasn't one that I was actually super interested in at the time. It was more so, I can't remember what it was specifically. It wasn't what I was absolutely interested in, but they just wanted to talk to me, figure out what my interests were, and it was something within the R&D space, but not necessarily on the process engineering side of things. So I was able to talk with them, meet with some of the managers, and it just so happened that as some of this stuff was going on, I interviewed for one of the positions, didn't end up getting it, but then was able to land a position because someone internally had left, and they had to open it up internally to see if anyone else was interested in. But basically, I was able to land a job without it really I guess it was posted externally for like a day, but I knew immediately when it was posted, was able to go through the interview process, talk with the manager, get everything settled, and the rest was history. So this process is a little bit different because, like I said, I was looking at different sides of the business, and I was not seeing the things that I wanted. I was feeling like I was failing with the first interview I had on the job in Pennsylvania, and then this other one on more the continuous improvement side, I was filled internally. So 2 different times on another side of business before I see one on this side of business on the pet care side. And then I interviewed for another one, and then that position I didn't get. But then at the same time, I didn't get this one. I was offered another one. And the one I was offered as a senior process engineer was exactly what I wanted. And so I share that story, both of those stories, in that a lot of times in life, it's going to feel like you're failing. It's going to feel like things are not going the right way. But resilience keeps pushing. It keeps going. It evaluates what went wrong. So you surround yourself with the right people, and you just keep pushing. So I have a whole resilience talk that maybe I will do in the future again, so you can hear about like the actual specific steps I took. But I just want to share some personal experience based on my job hunt and career and how that has gone. So I'm able to do that, and the job works really well with my schedule and all other stuff as far as being hybrid and getting to travel across the country and see different things, learn a lot of things. So it's been great. Have phenomenal people that work there. And one of the things that stuck out to me is that I put like the different stuff I do, whether it's the nonprofit stuff or the podcast stuff, on there on my resume. Most people never ask me about that. Every time I was interviewing or talking with them, they would always ask me about that and the different things I was doing outside. And they were genuinely excited about what I was doing. And so that stuck out to me because they didn't see me just as a number or someone that's trying to further their business, but they saw me as an entire complete person. And they wanted to make sure just as much that the company was suited for me, but I was also suited for the company as well. So it was definitely wanted it to be good on both sides, and the transition was really great. So many great things to say about it. But here's the thing I want to encourage you. Maybe you're in a place that you were recently laid off. Maybe you're in a company that doesn't value your input. maybe you just want to step out and do a little bit more, start your own business on the side. I would say first thing you want to do is reach out to a mentor for help. The mentor doesn't necessarily have to be the person that's doing this excellently well at the highest level, but someone that's actually doing it. So maybe you're someone that's interested in podcasting. I would say definitely reach out to me, or maybe there's a podcaster that you're interested in, reach out to them. Maybe they'll be able to help you, but I would say definitely reach out to me. I will definitely help however I can. I would say a lot of things with podcasting, it can be as complicated or as simple as you want it to be. You don't necessarily have to do video. You don't necessarily have to have like the fanciest camera. You can honestly use your phone to record a podcast with the video. Phone cameras have come a long way. And I was using my phone for a while. I'm not currently using my phone, but I would say you can just use your phone for a podcast. But keep in mind that resilience takes time. It is something that you have to be intentional about. It's not just going to happen. You have to be intentional. But if you can take the time to be intentional, build resilience, overcome failure, despite the setbacks, surround yourself with the right people, you can truly be incredible. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the IncrediPaul podcast with Paul Faronbi. We hope you enjoyed. Be sure to rate and review this podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform. We'll see you here next time. And be incredible. Incredible. Incredible.